This video has been a long time coming. Hey everyone, my name is Lashan and I make YouTube videos about my life since I decided to move here to Montreal, Canada from my home in Sydney, Australia and try to make a life here. So this video is gonna be about that. It's been a while since I've done a proper update video or any video really, and as you may have seen by some of my other posts, you may have been able to figure out things haven't exactly been going well. I know there's a bunch of you that want to know more about what it's actually like to move to Canada, so I'm going to try and go into as much detail as I can. It's been difficult. Let's pick up from where I left off. I just got a job making YouTube videos and at least I felt like I was 2 months away from becoming fluent in French. Everything was great. I had a job that would keep me stable, I was progressing well, and life in Montreal felt like it became a reality. The thing is, I didn't know how one of these things would affect the other. That job was entirely in English. I would make videos according to an English-speaking script, an English-speaking voiceover, listening to and analyzing those voiceovers day in, day out. This absolutely decimated my French comprehension. Combined with my 2 weeks in Australia for my graduation, which felt like it set me back 2 months of progress, and me settling into my comfort zone, I started laying off my French and my level began to decline. I was still practicing regularly, but not every day, and that really affected my progress. To get back to the level I was at during my Why Did I Move to Montreal video took months. That company I was working for was great when I started. I got really efficient at pumping out videos, and since I was paid per project, I could get my week's work done in about 2 days once I got efficient at it. So I had like 5-day weekends. And that was enough to pay my rent, my expenses, and have a little bit in savings. And at least once every 2 weeks, I would hit my bonus, which resulted in a massive pay increase. It was great. 5-day weekends and I was comfortable. But after a while, things started to go downhill. About 4 months in the company, they actually cut our bonuses because we were making too many bonuses, which was basically a substantial pay cut, and then came back months after that with a new bonus scheme, which was basically impossible to hit, and basically doubled the workload for the same pay, and sometimes even 25% less. It was a sinking ship, clearly, and combined with my desire to find a proper job, I started to lean off that company and put more time into my freelance work, while also putting all my time and energy into my French and getting it to a level where I could work in it, in engineering or project management. I decided this in about December. Nothing but French until mid-January, February, where I'd probably start my job hunt, get a job, and stay here. This was all a lot easier said than done. I knew this would be difficult from the outset, especially getting the job part. In Montreal, being bilingual isn't considered an advantage. It's just the default. It's expected. It's the first and biggest hurdle. It's what gets you onto the playing field. When you're in the thick of it, putting all your effort day in, day out into learning French and practicing, you kind of forget that. In your head, in that moment, you dream of that moment where you hit fluency. COD. Constitution du groupe nominal. Bonjour Lashan, voici sont tous les jobs which we were holding from you. Prenez quoi que vous voulez. Yeah, no. Doesn't happen. Now you're just bilingual and no one gives a shit. That huge achievement makes you the same as everybody else. Except not exactly the same because you aren't Canadian, you haven't gone to a Canadian university, and you don't have Canadian work experience. All things which I don't think should be a factor in hiring someone for a position, but here in Quebec, they are. I worked for a company that was actually founded here in Montreal when I was in Sydney, and even had a Skype interview with them for a position in Montreal before I even left Australia. Only reason for my rejection being my then barely there language skills, which is fair enough. But in my mind, as soon as I reached out to the company, they would be more than happy to take me back. I worked for you, we're mates, this should be easy, right? Nope. As a non-Canadian employee, they stonewalled me just as if I was someone off the street. I got a few HR emails from a friend who was still working there and sent them off, only to be greeted with stock copy-paste email responses telling me to apply on the website. Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it. If you're in this position, do not expect any goodwill. At least in civil engineering, my first plan to get a job had just failed. From there, I was applying for every job I was remotely qualified for on Indeed, reworking my CV more times than I can even remember, and reaching out to every friend and every contact I had or could make who could get me into at least an interview. After a couple tries, I managed to get my first callback in mid-March. I got a callback from a company for a civil engineer position using Revit on the upcoming Montreal mass transit project. It was just a first contact and he told me to call back in a week, but I was super excited. After 6 weeks, I got my first lead. The day after that, I got an email from a company asking me to come in for a first interview. So suddenly I had 2 leads, which was great. Like, things were looking up. Things were looking good, but because this callback was through a reference, I thought that was my best bet. Cue the next week of me thinking about nothing except calling him back and preparing for an interview. When I did call him back, not only did he not remember who I was, he mistook me for someone else and started talking about an interview, and then I had to correct him on who I was, and then him to tell me that, oh, sorry, we were actually looking for mechanical or electrical engineers, when he explicitly said civil engineers before. What the hell? And then, after making that immense screw up on my candidacy, he had the goal to ask me to help him out find someone for that position. Yeah, mate, I'll help you. I'll definitely help you. After putting me through that, I think we're on good terms. Yeah, for sure. Maybe you can just get better at doing your own job, mate. That waste of a week made me less prepared for my actual interview. I felt pretty confident because they were only asking for 0 to 2 years of experience, but when I went in, it felt like one of them wasn't interested in interviewing me at all. Just a side note for any job hunters in Montreal, it's extremely common for in-person interviews to be with 2 people in a good cop, bad cop routine. I had this so many times. The trick is to try and expect it and force yourself to engage both of them as equally as possible. While one guy was asking actual questions, the other was asking stupid curveball questions like, what's your favorite movie? Which did nothing but waste my time. I thought I did well enough for a second interview, but I got rejected a week later. This hurt because it was my first ever rejection after doing an in-person interview. Every other time I've done an in-person interview, I've got the job. So this was kind of new to me. But I think the nature of the rejection was the worst part. When I got the rejection, I quickly scanned through what was a very polite and nice rejection letter, closed it, tried to get it out of my mind, and move on as quickly as possible. But then, a couple minutes later, I got another email from them. A recall request. It didn't work because I'm on Gmail and it only works on Outlook. So that kind of piqued my curiosity to actually go through the first email. And I scrolled past my rejection, and what I found was an entire email thread with another candidate all the way to the very beginning. And this guy had a 45-minute interview scheduled instead of my 30-minute interview for the same position. And once I stalked him on LinkedIn, he also had 6 years of experience. And this guy also got rejected. Those 2 jobs evaporated as quickly as they materialized. This rejection, combined with crappy spring weather, knocked me out for the entire month of April. I was in a really bad place. Things were not looking good at all, money was running low, and I was close to giving up and going back home. Kind of like last April, actually. Let's hope this doesn't become a yearly thing. I got another interview for an engineering job towards the end of May. The process for this actually began in mid-February, where I met this guy at a bar who was working in civil engineering for this company and was willing to help me out. We became friends and he reached out to his contact a month later, and they asked for my CV, so I sent it. No response for a month, so I followed up. No response to that. 6 weeks later, I get an email back asking me to come in for an interview for a graduate engineering position the next week. At this point, I had completely given up on them being a possibility, so to hear back from them for not only an interview, but for an interview for a position that was ideal for me, it was a graduate position, was quite a surprise. I accepted it, went in expecting it to be completely in French, only to have it switch to English after the first minute. Same thing, good cop, bad cop routine. Nailed the interview. I thought they liked me a lot. Thought I had it. They said it would be a couple of weeks until a response because I had to interview all the other candidates, but that was fine with me. I had this in the bag. 2 weeks went by and I sent in an email asking for an update. No response. 5 weeks after that, sent another follow-up email. No response. I tried calling them and they weren't picking up. I sent a follow-up email to the other lady who interviewed me to no response. Yeah, I was getting worried. Complete radio silence. I was still hopeful though because I was so certain that I had this job. 7 weeks after my interview, I psyched myself up and tried to give them another call and see if I could get through to them over the phone. It connected. So, what did they say? Well, I wasn't rejected, but what happened instead was the entire company was going under a restructuring, therefore they put a freeze globally on all new hires, including on my candidacy. And she said it wouldn't be weeks, but months until she could get back to me on my application. But she assured me, you're not rejected. It's not that I was rejected. It's not that I was a bad candidate. It's not that someone was better than me, all of which would have been perfectly fine. It's just that I, in my moment of need, happened to have the worst luck in the entire world. And the company, instead of telling me this, decided to keep me in a state of limbo for almost 2 months, just in the vain hope that I would get a response from them. This whole Montreal thing was falling apart. I was steadfast running out of money, nothing was sticking, and after that I hit my breaking point and shattered completely. There was a moment where I had just $8 in my bank account. 8. See this? This is how many dollars were in my bank account. That isn't even enough money for me to give up and go back home, even if I wanted to, but I didn't. And the mere thought of selling all my belongings, finding someone to take over my room, and giving up and moving back to Australia never even crossed my mind. Not even once. Not even at this moment, at my lowest point. It was not an option. I didn't come all this way from the other side of the world to waste over a year of my life learning a whole new language for no reason, for a city that doesn't care. To come so close to my goal of getting a job and moving here permanently, only to give up when the dream was practically in my grasp? No, I was not going to give up. But I needed help. While freelance work does bring in some money, it's unstable and it was unlikely to cover my rent for the next month. Mentally, this weighed on me every single day. I actually had one of my cameras stolen a few months ago, and instead of using the insurance money to replace it, I used that money to pay rent. It's tough to say goodbye to friends when they go on short trips and not even knowing if you'll still even be here when they return. My parents had been supporting me a bit by loaning me money for the past few months to help me put all my energy into applying for jobs and learning French, but that stopped a month and a bit before. I was hoping to be employed by this point, 5 months into my search, and I was kind of hesitant to ask for more, but I was getting desperate. I reached out to my parents to see if they could loan me any more money, and they agreed to give me enough for 2 more months. After that, I'm completely on my own and would have to return home if unsuccessful. 2 months, all or nothing, and I was committed. This video so far is basically a story of how badly can I get rejected. Every time I get rejected, I'm like, oh, well, that was absolutely dehumanizing. That's the worst way I could possibly get rejected. There is always a way. There is always a worse way. They are all different. From being told they were mistaken and never actually contacting you, to getting copy-paste rejection where the other rejected applicants were way overqualified, to not actually getting rejected, just having the worst luck on planet Earth. This isn't even everything I've been through. I haven't mentioned the countless leads that seemed promising but ended up going nowhere, from lengthy email chains to in-person meetings that resulted in actual referrals but still ended up fizzling out without even a phone call. The past 4 years of my life have been a series of astronomical highs paired with devastating lows. When things seemed to be working out beyond my wildest dreams, they'd be crushed just as quickly as they began. I'm a pretty resilient person, but these continuous setbacks do fatigue you over time. But just once in my life, I wanted to put a ton of time and effort into a ridiculous goal I had, and for things to actually work out, for all that effort to be worth it. I needed a win. After a lot of encouragement from friends, I hit the job search hard, literally just spamming applications on Indeed, expanding my search to jobs that I could do, but weren't exactly in my field. One of them I interviewed for, got told to expect an answer next week, only to receive an email the Monday after that asking to schedule a call that day. The other guy not picking up or responding for over an hour after our scheduled time, only for him to call me back and tell me that they picked someone else who had more experience. Could have emailed me, dude. Or at least been on time. About 3 weeks ago, things started looking up. I had 3 leads, 2 in my field that I got through referrals, 1 not in my field that I got through Indeed. This was the first time I had more than 1 actual lead at the same time. I felt like I had to get something now. I nailed the interview for the first place, which was completely in French, did pretty good in the second one, which was like mostly French/bilingual, and nailed the phone interview for the third one, which wasn't in my field. The first 2 I had to wait for a response. The third asked me to come in for an in-person interview the week after that. It was a bit abrupt. It was a Friday morning that I got an email to have an interview that day at 5:30 p.m. I was prepped and ready for the job interview for something that wasn't in my field. Came in, met the lady who was interviewing me, and sat down. After asking me the obvious question of, "You're an engineer. Why do you want this job?" And my response, she just looked me dead in the eye and told me, "You don't want this job." Yeah. Okay. After that, she went into all the details of the job and said if she hired me, she'd have to fire me in 3 months because I'd be miserable and hate my life and hate coming into work every day. I just sat there in shock. What is going on? I asked her why she brought me in for an interview in the first place, and she said to teach you a lesson because you're making a mistake. After all of that, she said, if you still want this job, tell me you want this job. I was completely honest and I said, I don't want this job. She asked me why I didn't pursue industrial engineering, and I said it didn't occur to me. And now she's showing me around the offices for all of that, involving everything from like the software design to the 3D printing to testing, and looks at me and is like, this is what you want to do, right? And I'm like, yeah, like that looks awesome. She tells me, if you took the other position, you'd be sitting there every day wanting to be here instead. I asked her again, like, why would you even bring me in the first place apart from teaching me a lesson? And she said that everyone in the office had seen my video CV that I made in April, and they were like, you have to bring this guy in. So she did. And this is what happened. Then I meet the co-founder and we get along, and she explains that I need a job, and now she's literally trying to help me out. Like, this is the strangest interview I've ever been to in my entire life. He's thinking more project management because that's my experience, and after some more talking, I head home, basically still in shock over what just happened, but also ridiculously excited. Like, what actually just happened? I went in expecting to do an interview for one job and walked out with something completely different. I wrote the best, most heartfelt, most genuine thank you email I've ever written in my life, and I got a response the same day. You know how many responses I've gotten to thank you emails so far in my life? Zero. Definitely a good sign. And on a Friday night too. The next week I got brought in for an interview for a project management role they literally made for me, and it went great. I gelled with everybody there, and just the way I felt walking out of that office, just nothing but pure excitement. I was legitimately stoked to have the opportunity to work there. I got told there was no more next step, just a yes or no. And then instead of that, the next week I got a final interview with the co-founder. As soon as I walked in, the lady who interviewed me in the first place greeted me, and I just felt like it was already family. This was it. I sat down with co-founder, and the first thing he says straight up is like, I'm not gonna ask you any behavioral questions or test you on your experience. I'm gonna offer you a contract. I did it. I actually freaking did it. I got an actual job in Montreal. What? I left everything behind in Sydney, Australia last year to try and make a life here in Montreal, Canada. And after a year of busting my ass to learn French and over 6 months of hell searching for a job, I did it. Like, the dream I thought of as impossible when I was here on exchange 4 years ago is now a reality. Now it's my reality. All that effort, all those leads that went nowhere, all that rejection, all those nights spent sitting in my room in despair, thinking I'm just wasting my life away for some fantasy, was worth it. I won. What is going on? I can't... What?
Hello?
Hey, Tate, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
What's up? So, I had an interview today.
Yeah?
I got the job.
Okay, good.
Good?
Okay, you going to take it?
What? Yeah.
You're going to accept it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
What do you have to do?
What?
Well, congratulations. How do you find
Thank
it?
you. That went as expected. Hello? Hi, Emma.
Hello.
What's up?
I'm gardening.
Gardening.
Did you got something good news?
Yeah, I got the job.
Did you got...
Yeah.
Oh my god, don't say. I'm so happy for you. Oh, give me a cuddle. Oh my god. Congratulations, my birthday. What?
I got a job.
Yeah, I know. Cool.
Yeah.
Where? In Montreal?
Yeah, in Montreal.
Actually?
Yeah.
Is it a salary? What is it? How much are you making?
It's a salary.
Is your Mile End thing only one day?
I mean, it's actually like Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
But you're only going one day?
I only have one free ticket. So can I tell you something?
Sure.
I lied to you like yesterday, so I actually got the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
No, I actually got the job. But nothing.
Why'd you lie?
Huh?
Why'd you
I want to
lie?
tell you in person.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh, what is wrong with you? So many levels. Do that to me. That is so mean. But congrats, but that is so mean. Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
When do you start? When do you leave?
I have to thank my parents for supporting me, as stupid as this may have seemed from the outset, and my friends here in Montreal who have been with me through both my best and my worst moments. Like, you know who you are. It could not have kept going without you. Seriously. So the lesson here is apply for jobs that aren't in your field and luck out in the most ridiculous way possible. I got super ridiculously lucky, sure, but I still had to keep trying and go through all that rejection and all those false leads to get to it. You only need one yes, after all. Fortune favors the persistent. And lastly, would I recommend anyone to do what I just did? If you are a recent graduate in civil engineering and want to move here and try and get a job in civil engineering / project management in Montreal, no. Do not do what I just did. I would not wish what I went through on anybody. It is hell out here. Civil engineering is the #1 most difficult industry to get into in Quebec if you are not Canadian. If you try that, you are wasting your time. If you have 3 years of experience, or better yet, don't want a job in the civil engineering industry or just willing to brave through it, go for it. My friends on my visa with more experience have had a much easier time than me to get a job, but also none of them were in civil engineering. Don't click away. So this story does not end yet, because the title is called I'm Leaving Montreal. This is not clickbait. I don't do clickbait. So I am starting in 2 weeks and I could not be more excited. The company I was the most excited to work for is now the company I will be working for. Apart from wrapping up freelance work with all various companies I work for, I've been so invested in this job search that I haven't really left the island of Montreal in 8 months, apart from job interviews and 1 day trip. I haven't been on a plane in 15 months. Not normal for me, not normal. And outside of going back to Sydney for my graduation, I haven't really traveled in 21 months. That is 2 years without traveling. I've said this multiple times on this channel. I love travel. I've been to 31 countries. I am getting withdrawals. I just achieved one of the biggest milestones in my life, and I don't want, but I need to celebrate. Cue montage. I think I just bought a ticket to Iceland. I am in Iceland. What? The moment I'm gonna try and find Bruafoss. Quite a hard to reach waterfall somewhere along the Golden Circle. After this, I'm gonna do the Ring Road. So standard YouTube stuff, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed that. If you want more Montreal stuff and also some epic Iceland content probably coming soon. And I am going to enjoy Iceland. Alright, Lashan out.